I got to interview Tom Peters one time. That was fun. I enjoyed that. I was fanboying. I was up in New York during like a blizzard. It was too cool. Man, my internet is horrible. I look awful. Oh, it just pains me every time. What are you gonna do? Yeah, for everybody who is joining in, get a cup of coffee, chill. We're gonna start in a little bit. Smack the like button. Let your friends know that you're here. Get a good coffee.
What kind of coffee do you drink, Sam?
Every kind of coffee. I spent 10 years in the military, so I will drink anything. It can be cold, hot. I don't care. I love coffee. Don't get me wrong. I love really good coffee. Man, I love coffee. And I grew up in Detroit.
Do you drink? Oh, yeah. So
yeah.
Do you drink it black or?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, I drink it the right way. Not that they are opinionated. No, I love coffee. I love Colombian coffee. I love what's the one from Hawaii? It's just I love coffee. Period. Absolutely love coffee. And when you grow up in Detroit, you grow up drinking coffee when you're like 5 years old.
So or when you're from Mexico.
Oh yes. We're gonna go there. Don't worry, we'll definitely go there. We're getting all kind of love from people. It's so nice, everybody. So much love. Our CEO David Brere's out there, and I think it's David who keeps smacking the like button. I knew David would show up for this one because I posted on Twitter about the NBA team, the Oklahoma Thunder, being a partner with you, and David played semi-professional ball. David, actually, our CEO, in his youth, grew up in Houston. Erika, how's that? So, English guy has a little hint of baller in him. I grew up in Detroit. I grew up desperately wanting to be a basketball player, and I 5'7" at the age of 13 and never grew another inch. So, basketball's not in my life. Yeah, I know. What are you gonna do? Everybody who's joining, thanks. Jump in, get a coffee, smack like buttons, share this thing. We're gonna start in just a minute. You have questions, throw them in the comments. We try to get to every question. If we don't get to them during the show, we will follow up with you after the show. Okay, so grab your coffee. I don't have enough coffee. I need more, but oh well.
So is your CEO then a Rockets fan or?
David?
We should ask him.
I'm going to guess. David Brere. I'm going to guess he's going to say Chicago Bulls because he's probably – he is a Chicago Bulls fan. David and I were in Chicago one time, and he desperately wanted to go see the stadium and statue of Michael Jordan, and I could care less. And David also owns 1 million pairs of Air Jordans, as he'll tell you. Hey, David from Ireland. How you doing? Oh, my Lord. Istanbul. I love it. Aileen, I love Istanbul. And I love sitting on porches in Istanbul and drinking coffee and talking with my friends. I apologize for my internet connection. It looks like I'm dialing in from Istanbul. That said, Istanbul has better wireless connectivity than Florida does. So there you go. I wasn't kidding, Erika. We're going to have folks from everywhere. All right. That said, we are going to get started. And hey, Brian from Jack Henry, I love you. Glad to see you here. I think Brian's up and around Atlanta, and Corey LeBlanc from Louisiana. With that, let's get started because this show is going to be good. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the 12th episode of Fintech Insider, the Breakfast Show US. This is the show from the folks at 11FS bringing you interesting insights into the fintech and banking landscape. I am Sam Maule, the 11FS Managing Director, North America. I'll be your host for this morning's show, and I'm obviously coming from the bottom of the Wi-Fi connectivity speed in the U.S. What are you going to do? Let us know where you're watching. Jump in the comments. Ask questions. Give your town a shout out. Let me know what kind of coffee you're drinking. And more importantly, in this episode, let me know what NBA team you support. Detroit Pistons. There's my love. Grew up in Detroit. David Brere, CEO, is a Chicago Bulls fan because he doesn't know any better. But today, we're happy to be joined by Erika Lucas. She's the co-founder of StitchCrew. On today's show, we're going to talk about what StitchCrew is, what it's like having an accelerator in Oklahoma, Erika's background as an entrepreneur and in bringing her experience into the business. And Erika, I really want to talk about small business, big time, especially with what's going on today. So let's start with Erika. I watched your TED Talk last night. I blasted it out to everybody. I watched it again this morning. Before we even talk about StitchCrew, can you talk about why you have a love for entrepreneurs and small business, please? Because I love that story.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in Mexico to a family of bootstrap entrepreneurs. And these are entrepreneurs that started businesses not because it was cool or sexy, but it was just our way of life. It was a way to provide for our family. So my single mother was an entrepreneur. My grandparents were entrepreneurs, uncles, cousins. So I grew up with a love and a deep respect for entrepreneurs because I saw the dignity that it brought to their life, being able to provide for their family. But I also saw the struggle, right, of making payroll every week. So deep respect, deep love for entrepreneurs. I even ended up marrying one. So
she married a serial entrepreneur, Chris. I think you told me he has had 4 businesses so far, 2 where you learned lessons and 2 that have been very successful, which I like. And Jill Castillo, hello. She's on, so I expect, oh my God, I expect some good questions from Jill. Erika, just, so Jill Castillo, who's our favorite community banker, especially down in Oklahoma, she loves Erika. I've had, oh my God, so much. I asked Jill for stories. Erika, I'm so sorry. Wouldn't we have time? I'll dive into the stories she came up with. If you don't mind, though, talk about, so coming from Mexico and a whole family of entrepreneurs to then deciding that, talking with your husband and leaving the industry in financial services to do an accelerator in Oklahoma. What was the motivation there? And when did you know it was the right time to start something like that?
So first of all, hi, Jill. I love Jill as well. So she's a big mentor of mine and a friend. So I wish I could tell you that we have a cool story about how we got started and all of that. But really, we started it because it was out of frustration. We were frustrated with a couple of points. The first one was the lack of capital going to women and entrepreneurs of color. The second thing that was a pain point for us is that we started seeing that a lot of founders were leaving the middle of the country because they felt like they couldn't necessarily launch and grow businesses here. They felt like they needed to be in New York or Silicon Valley because 78% of venture capital is spent in the coastal areas. So those became 2 frustration points for us. We actually talked to several other people in the state, colleagues, partners, peers, to see if they wanted to do something. And then when we saw that nobody was really doing anything, we would talk about it, but nobody was doing anything. Then we decided to go ahead and take the leap of faith. Luckily, we partner, as you mentioned, with our local NBA team, which is the Oklahoma City Thunder. Woohoo to any Thunder fans. But that brought a lot of credibility. The partnership was great because for us, it was important that what has happened, I feel like, in a lot of corporate states like Oklahoma, is that we've forgotten our roots, our entrepreneur roots, because actually Oklahoma is a state that it's a very wealthy state. We have had a lot of our big corporate and headquarter corporate entities here actually started as an entrepreneur at some point. We didn't import them from another state or another region. They were grown here. But I feel like now that they become a corporate entity and a big entity, we've forgotten those roots. And so for us, it was really important to partner with the Oklahoma City Thunder to bridge the gap that exists between corporate America and startups.
How did you get the hook in with the NBA team? I've got to ask, because one, for those that aren't familiar with the NBA, the fan base in Oklahoma City for NBA basketball is absolutely bonkers. I think that's a nice way of putting it, right? It is just nuts. So how did you get a hook in with them? And by the way, awesome job.
Thank you. Yeah. We do have the best fans, by the way. So I used to work, I'm a recovering economic developer. So that is part of my professional journey. I spent 6 years at the Oklahoma Department of Commerce, managing the Foreign Direct Investment Unit. And so as part of that, when the Thunder moved from Seattle, it was called another name back then, but when that happened, we developed strong relationships with the ownership and the executive team of the team. And so we had those relationships for years. In fact, how we ended up coming up with the concept of the accelerator, it was because Brian Burns, one of the executives at the Thunder, and I were having drinks and talking about the problems that we saw or the gaps that we saw in our state and how we might be able to contribute a little bit to solving those. And that's honestly how it started. We just had a good relationship with the executive team. We were having drinks, and then we started seeing, what if this happened? What if we partner? What would that look like? And that's how it started.
What I love, this is what I absolutely love, the similarities between 11FS and our founding story and how we approach business and what StitchCrew has done. I love, we're 100% bootstrap. The idea for the company came being trunked in the back of a cab with 3 founders. I think it was Neil Cross, head of digital innovation for a massive bank out in Asia, talking about how broke they thought the industry was, especially when it came to consulting. I mean, that's our origin story, and doing the what if questions, right?
100%. We are also bootstrapped. So, the first year, Chris and I were just so into this, and we genuinely wanted to help entrepreneurs because we've been there. We know what it helps. We know that everybody wants to work with entrepreneurs once they get funding, but not necessarily before they get funding. And so the first year, we actually didn't pay ourselves any salary. We had one local angel investor that gave us a $50,000 grant, and we stretched that as far as we can. We got the Thunder to sponsor us and give us space. And so, I mean, we were very lucky through partnerships and through our relationships, but we bootstrapped it, and we just did what we had to do to get it off the ground.
Man, I'll tell you, it is amazing the sweat and tears especially when you bootstrap a company, to get it mobilized, to get it off the ground, and to get it engaged. The importance of partnerships, but I can't imagine bootstrapping something that is an accelerator for other startups. You know what I mean? To bring them in and that focus, because what you're basically doing is giving back into the community. But one of the things I absolutely love about StitchCrew and the concept of it is, one, it isn't in Silicon Valley, and it's not in New York, and it's not in Austin, and it's not in Seattle. You stayed right there in Oklahoma, which I absolutely love, giving the startups there a chance to actually learn through the process, and your absolute laser-like focus on diversity when it comes to working with these founders and stressing that part of it. Can you talk a little bit about that? You threw out some numbers in your TED Talk. I put a link out to that, but can you talk about the whole issue around, capital investment, getting capital when you're a startup, and just the massive problem we have?
Yeah, sure. So think about this. Less than 20% of startups ever access capital, whether it's venture capital in the early stages, right, of the company to get a launch and going. So, and I'm not just talking venture capital, I'm talking traditional financing, banks, and all of that. And then within that, less than 1% ever gets venture capital. We just talked about 78% of that 1% it's spent in the coast. And to make things worse, if you're an entrepreneur of color or a woman, your odds of raising capital are even worse, given that less than 2% of that venture capital is spent on women and less than 1% on entrepreneurs of color. Entrepreneurs like me, I was born and raised in Mexico, an immigrant entrepreneur, and so of course it's dear to my heart. But not only because it's personal attached to me. There was a recent study by JP Morgan that quote calls that more than $4 trillion are being left at the table because we're not paying attention to this blind spot. It's capital that we could be infusing into our economy by investing in this, in these founders. There's also incredible data back in the fact that diverse teams or startups led by women and entrepreneurs of color tend to outperform their peers. So there's really no excuse why we shouldn't be doing that. I guess the only excuse that I come across all the time, and it was one of those frustrations too of why we decided to launch StitchCrew, is that a lot of investors would often argue, well, there's just not enough deal flow. There's not enough women or people of color starting high growth businesses. And I can talk about that and spend hours talking about the systemic barriers to entry for women and entrepreneurs of color that do lead into maybe a gap of deal flow. But I also would argue to those investor colleagues that we're just not doing enough to actually look for those deals. We don't have diverse teams. We're not approachable. We don't know how to look for those deals. And let's face it, as investors, we like to invest in people within our networks or people that look like us or people that we feel comfortable with. So we need to get over that bias that we all have and admit that there are barriers to entry for women and entrepreneurs of color. And we need to admit that there are that we have this unconscious or conscious bias often.
What I love about what we've been able to do in this show so far, since we started doing this last show, you're the second guest we've had on from Oklahoma. Jill, I think, was one of our very first. I think Jill was the very first one we did, Jill Castillo. And this was back when the whole PPP program was kicking in, the CARE Act and the loans for small businesses. And Jill has been, God, a force of nature on Twitter and the news and everything else, along with a ton of other community banks like Origin Bank, like Tab Bank. And I would say the community banks as a whole have so stepped up their game when it comes to, you know, this whole issue of trying to get this money into the hand of small businesses. What's it like in Oklahoma right now? I'm very curious, Erika. What are you seeing? I know that I read today in payments that they're estimating something like 58% of small businesses are not going to recover from this.
Yeah.
For what we're going through. I mean, what are you seeing on the ground right now?
I mean, I do get to see people like Jill and other community banks and banks in general trying to do whatever they can to help mitigate this. And Jill even posted recently on Twitter how I guess we ranked 15 in the number of capital deploy on SBA loans. So that's good. But I agree with you. It's not going to be enough. I mean, what people, I think, often fail to understand, particularly if you're so far removed from running an actual business, you know, and I feel like a lot of our people, policymakers are very far removed from the entrepreneurial journey. And so they don't realize that, you know, it depends, right, on the business model that you're doing and whether you're venture back or not. But most small businesses don't have, you know, 4 weeks of runway. Some don't even have 2 weeks of runway, particularly when we're talking about restaurants and retail businesses. And so the fact that a lot of them have to wait so long to get the funds deployed, the fact that it's tied to employment, when, you know, if you have to wait so long and you don't have the runway, some people already had to let go of those people. So now they don't qualify because they don't have the same amount of payroll that they had before this all got started. So, you know, unfortunately, I just don't think it's enough. I think we're going to need another infusion of capital. And I think that even with another infusion of capital, I think, unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of businesses that just don't make it because of the timeline and the wait period.
Yeah, for the folks who are watching this live, again, any question, throw them in the comments. Erika, believe it or not, we have folks tuned in from Pakistan, Istanbul, Ireland, the UK. I love the international flavor of this. And for those folks that are in those regions, if you want to throw in the comments what it's like right now for small businesses in, you know, especially what we're going through in Istanbul, I would love to know. You know, Pakistan, the UK, we have a pretty good handle on the UK a bit. with the 11FS show that we do over there. David does, our CEO, at, I don't know, 3:30 a.m. I think it is. I have insomnia. I was up at 3:30, David. I watched it this morning. You should be proud of me. But you know, I would definitely be curious to see what the impact is over there.
Sam, can I
this,
can I add something too?
Yeah.
Because I think it's important. I think it's important that we talk about the SBAs and the business owners in how this affects. But I think it's equally important that we talk about consumer spending, because, as you know, 70% of our economy comes from consumer spending. Yeah. So we are spending a lot of time talking about how to help business owners, and that's good. But if you really want to help us, let's also focus on consumer spending, because that's, you can give us all the money that we want to retain our workforce, but that's not sustainable. What's going to be sustainable, and what we need to figure out is how to really recover from this once we open or slowly open or whatever. It's going to be, what about the consumers? Can the middle class still buy my products or my services? How fast, how often? What's the consumer behavior going to look like? And what can we do, both as policymakers, investors, and everything, to make sure that we also focus on talking about that? Because really that will make or break our businesses even without a COVID-19.
Yeah, it is what we're seeing in the U.S. especially, and there's been a bunch of news about this, how COVID-19 has affected consumer spending, right? My sister-in-law and brother-in-law run a small grocery store, an IGA, we call it, independent grocery something. I have no idea what IGA stands for. But it's, you know, privately owned just by them, be like a Kroger, a Publix, or a Safeway. And, you know, they can't keep the stock shelved right now. This is where people are spending money, a ton on groceries, evidently a ton on hair dye. I gave up, obviously, as you can tell by my beard. It's just, I'm past the point of health. but the shift in spending, right? I mean, the car industry is taking a massive hit. The entertainment, restaurants, gymnasiums, right? You think about those places, hair salons, just absolutely getting slammed. And the majority of those, again, are small businesses that own that. You know, I mean, what our life is going to be like from both the consumer side and the small business side in the next few months as we go through this. I just see so many business models being turned on their heads, you know.
I agree.
Yeah, it makes it interesting. I'm curious for you, you know, how does an event like this change the accelerator programs? Because you do a 12-week program, right? When you bring these in, I think you have 2 a year, is what you run?
We do 2 a year. We help up to 20 companies a year. One in the spring, one in the fall. So we do it in cohorts, 10 in the spring, 10 in the fall. You know, we intentionally built the accelerator to be remote friendly, because we focus on helping. Yeah, we focus on helping local companies, but we also help companies that maybe are not headquartered here, but they have a tie to Oklahoma, either a supply chain tie or an industry tie or a personal tie. So we intentionally built the program to be remote friendly. So going virtual wasn't that much of a problem for us. Where we're still trying to figure out how to mitigate this is on demo days. So at the end of the 12 weeks, we always introduce the companies to a room full of investors and stakeholders and corporate partners. And usually we have around 200 invite-only people. And so that's going to change for us. So we are talking to peer accelerators and other colleagues in the industry to, you know, who have done virtual demo days or live stream demo days. And we're talking about how that's going to affect us. Our next demo day, it's scheduled to be at the end of May. So we are following close guidelines from public health officials on what that's going to do. And so far, what they keep telling me is like, look, Erika, even if we reopen by then, it's going to be a slow process. So having a room full of 200 people, it's probably not something that we would feel comfortable recommended at this point. So we haven't made any final decisions, because we will work with the Thunder to assess and mitigate that, but more than likely it's looking like we probably will end up doing something virtual.
It's yeah, Eileen had just asked this question. Thanks, Eileen. How do you think the concept of community will be affected by this? I had this conversation with my wife this morning. I'm a consultant. I spend my life on planes. I haven't flown, since the end of February, which for me is just weird, right? I'm usually every week on a plane going somewhere. And I can tell you right now, I'm not comfortable, sitting. I'm not comfortable, sitting, next to two other people, like in the middle seat, or even one in that distance. How air travel will change. Are we going to have one person per row on each side? Even the concept of somebody sitting in the row behind me. I know people are still flying, and I get that, but the things we just take for granted. You're partnered with the Thunder, right? Odds are, if they are able to play, they're going to be playing to empty stadiums, and. Yeah. But even when they play, it's NBA. It's a massive contact sport. The decisions that have to be made around this, and it touches every part of our lives, literally.
Yeah, and I think.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and that's why I think that we need to, because I think her questions was related, like, and community minded.
Yeah.
One of the things that we could do is try to be gracious too, and not be shaming people, because these are hard decisions. I mean, these are decisions that I think, I haven't to date, and since this all started, I haven't talked to a single business owner, or particularly with the startups that we work with, that are not incredibly focused on how they help the people that work for them.
Yeah.
And those that had to let go of people, I mean, I was on the phone crying with them. They're not easy decisions. It's not something that we woke up in the morning saying, I'm going to do this. So I think that one of the things that we could do as a community, we're going to have to get through this. We're going to have to do it together. And the more, we just need to rely on grace and really be supportive of each other. Now, absolutely, there are capitalists out there that give capitalism a bad name, and they should be called out because they're doing things that they, and I think their team, staff, customers are going to remember that and how they reacted to COVID-19. But we also have to realize that that's not everybody. And so having grace and just knowing that these are hard decisions and being supportive, I think it's going to be super important.
A great question from Amara. I hope I said it right, Amara from Pakistan. How do you think the gig economy workers will be affected from this? I can tell you they're being massively affected. And what can be done to help this economy? The numbers, for example, I think it was a week ago or 2 weeks ago that from a revenue standpoint and transaction side, Uber Eats just absolutely galloped past Uber when it came to car rides. I mean, the chart just went like this, and that's just one company. So what do you think, Erika, for the gig economy? What are we looking at?
I mean, it's tough. You mentioned consultants. Those are freelancers, gig workers. I mean, it's tough because people are putting things on hold. People, it goes back to that consumer behavior too, and how we're going to be spending our money and all of that. So I think it's going to be a tough time, and I think that we need to figure out ways in which we can still incorporate that gig economy in other ways, or in whatever ways that we can. For example, another thing that I think, I lost like $50,000 in income this year alone so far on speaking gigs, and conferences and stuff like that, because conferences are suffering big time. And, I know that a lot of people that are out there, authors, they don't necessarily rely on book sales and royalty. They rely on speaking gigs and stuff like that. So, I mean, it's just going to be interesting to see. I don't know that we have all the answers, because I don't, when you talk about the gig economy, it now touches so many different industries and sectors that it's hard.
It's, I think just, I think it was yesterday, from a banking standpoint, Sibos, which is like the biggest banking conference, was going to be held in Boston this year. They announced that it's going to be virtual, and that's in October, by the way. South by Southwest getting canceled in Austin, right? Massive, I think $365 million to the local economy in Austin was lost. So, recovering from that. And again, that affects so many small business owners. I'll tell you that the sense of community, though, that was a great question. And your answer, Erika, is what I 100% embrace, right? And that the like partnerships you have with Jill and her bank there. John Zanoff in the comments right now. So John Zanoff is the founder of Empire Startups. He's been on this show before last week, and he was actually with Barclays TechStars program, Erika. So really large accelerator in New York. Just pinged and said, let me know if you're looking for mentors. I love you, John. Look at that. So I'm going to connect you to John. John is the, how did I call him last time? My favorite bald-headed CrossFit motorcycle driving New Yorker with cool dogs and a lovely wife that I know. There you go, John. There you go. Record that. Make that your ringtone. That's what I'm saying.
That sounds like a mentor I want to have on my corner.
John is fantastic, and Empire Startups, we love you guys, man. This is a fantastic organization, and I think that's what it's going to take, right? I think it's going to take more than just your local community, It's, I think it's going to go coast to coast and across the Atlantic and Pacific in order to recover from this.
No, and actually, I will say most of our mentors are actually out of state. So I would definitely take that because I think that one of the things that we do, and I think, unfortunately, going back to economic development and how we work sometimes, we fall in love with our city or a state and the people that live with it, and that's great. But if you really want to build a high growth company, you're hoping that company is exponentially, right? And that it does business in multiple states and countries. So for us, very early on, we understood, look, we need mentors, investors from all over, particularly investors, right? So out of all the investors that have opted in to look at our deal flow, I would say 90% of them are not in Oklahoma. Again, we're a very wealthy state. There's a lot of wealth in the state of Oklahoma, but our investment community tends to deploy those investments in more traditional assets and outlets. So we had to rely on investors from all over that want to invest and deploy capital and venture capital. They understand the risk associated with it. So I would definitely take on John and any other mentors or investors that are listening to this.
So a couple of takeaways for this. One, these are mine, and add to them, Erika, because you're so close to this. Diversity matters. As Tom Peters, a very famous management author, would say and screams at the top of his lungs, if you're not looking at diversity across your board, across your executive team, as far as who you're investing in, especially when it comes to women, people of color, I mean, take your pick across the board, you're missing out a massive opportunity. And you're being stupid. We'll just call it what it is. You're being ignorant, flat out. If you think the only accelerators and only innovation is happening on the, New York or San Francisco, you're absolutely nuts. The funny thing is the internet works everywhere but Jacksonville, Florida. Obviously. But, Wade Arnold, I love Wade. He was on last week. He said this a couple times. It's amazing. But you can get internet in Iowa on a farm, and you can create great companies like DeWallow, like Banno, take your pick. So what we're seeing in areas like in Oklahoma and examples, shining examples, both from a banking standpoint and from an innovation and working with small businesses like what StitchCrew does. Pay attention. How's that? Pay attention, folks.
Oh, absolutely. And I will, and I will say too, we're not new to entrepreneurship. We're not new to startups. Right. Look at the companies that that had come out of the state or in the middle of the country. We've just been operating 2 years. We've already helped 50 companies. Those companies have raised more than $10 million. So, we're we're going to continue to do this.
And we're going to continue to follow this. So we're going to get you on the Fintech Insider podcast. I promised Jill that once all this is done, 11FS, we're going to bring our video crew, and we're going to go to Herd on Herd. We are going to get into Oklahoma City, and we're going to come by StitchCrew. This I got to see. Get you guys on that. So
get you to a Thunder game as well.
Exactly. Where I will be wearing my Bad Boys Pistons 1989 championship t-shirt for the crowd. Erika, time flies. We're up against the clock. So for the folks that are watching, I've already put a link out to Erika's TED Talk on Twitter and on LinkedIn. Watch it twice. It's really good. What's the best place for folks to find out about StitchCrew and to follow you and jumping into more of a conversation with you?
Yeah, so our website is www.stitchcrew.com. On social media, I'm personally most active on Twitter, though watch out because I don't just talk about startups. I am a political junkie as well. And I hate politics, but I love policy because it affects so many people. But we're active on all social media channels, just Erika LS7. That's my handle.
And y'all have a podcast, by the way. So
we do.
Take a look. Yeah, listen to it. Jump on that. A lot of great episodes are out there. I've listened to 2 so far. Gonna walk my dogs later this afternoon and listen to like 4 more, so it'll be perfect. As for me, everybody, Sam Maule on Twitter, 11FS, follow us. If you have insomnia like me, get up around 3:30 Eastern time, and you can listen to David Breer to his interviews from our UK side. By the way, we've made a playlist out on our YouTube channel. Every single interview we've done has been out there. Jill Castillo, we're going to get the audio for you. We're just going to get you back on because LinkedIn, the connectivity was horrible on that day. Tomorrow, I'm going to be joined by one of my good friends, Dan Kimmerling. He's the co-founder and managing partner at Decian Capital. And Eric, I'm going to introduce you to Dan, by the way. Great guy, also a member of Mensa. So he's the smartest man I've ever met in my life. Everybody, thanks for joining. Thanks for the questions. Thanks for coming from Pakistan, Istanbul, Ireland, the UK, all across the US. We really appreciate you guys. We really do. And thanks for the comments. Thanks, Erika.
Thank you. Bye.